Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to the stream. All right, so let me do a little quick demo of what I've got working here. The last couple streams we've been working on the step over and step out features for the debugger. Hey, how's it going, Bama? Good morning, Singapore. So yeah, so basically F10 steps over. If we hit F5, we can step inside functions. Hey Jono, how's it going? So stepping out with Shift F11 gets us out of that. So that's pretty much what I've got going here. It's working pretty well now. Still a couple of things to do. So one of those things is handling breakpoints during the step over, step out. I'm doing pretty well, you know, as well as can be, I suppose. Had a busy weekend. My wife and I, we're still working, so when the weekend comes, that's when we take care of all the things we can't do during the week. So ventured out into the wild outdoors and went grocery shopping and all that with masks and gloves and lots of distance. It is pretty crazy. But I'm glad to see that at least the people I'm crossing, everyone's taking it quite seriously. Yeah, so I want to do this here. I discovered last time that right now supporting setting breakpoints in multiple files is not done correctly. In fact, I should just say fix setting breakpoints in multiple files, because it's really just a buggy thing right now. Step out, really, this is part of what we're doing here, so it's more like step over and step out, because it all goes together. And part of this change will also be to clean up this state machine that I've got going here. One decision I made since last stream is I'm going to reduce my font size. I normally have it at 120 like this, and same thing in here. I usually am zoomed in like this, but I'm going to opt to reduce my font just a little bit. Hopefully you guys can read it like this, because I'm just finding it much too difficult to to read the code when it's so large on screen, especially now that I keep going back and forth. Like, I want to be able to, you know, do some stuff like this and still be able to read what's on screen. I can already barely do that with using a single monitor. On top of that, with zoomed in fonts, it sort of gets ridiculous. So I'm going to try that. If you can't read it, let me know. If it's too difficult or whatnot, I guess I'll go back. But if it's okay, I'll keep going like this. I noticed other dev streamers don't really increase their font size too much. And you know, as long as you've got a 1080p signal, it's pretty good. Yeah? All right, thanks, Jono. Man, I'm hot. Oh, I think it's hot in my basement. All right, maybe I've just been running around too much. Okay, so oh, thanks, Bama. You put me on your second monitor, so I'm good. Okay, so what did I want to do? So okay, so yeah, I think we're good with this. Right, that's what I wanted to do. Okay, so let's see if I can come up with a way to test this. So basically, let's do this. So when we start, we're going to go into foo. And we're going to put a breakpoint here on this printf here. And what I'll do is I'll step here and I'll step out. And it won't stop here. That's how we'll start. It's something nice and simple. What I might like most in your stream is the thought process, the way you go about solving. I recognize myself in this a lot, liked a lot when you were doing 6809 assembly code. The debugger stuff is really good stuff to learn. Well, thanks, Bama. I appreciate that feedback. I realize that when I stream, I'm certainly a lot slower than if I were to be working on this by myself, because I do tend to think out loud and explain everything I'm doing. And sometimes I wonder if it's too much. I wonder if, I should just shut up and code. But I see, like, it seems like you appreciate that I explain what I'm trying to do or what I'm thinking about. Interestingly, this is not really a natural thing, right? Like programming and then speaking about the code you're writing while you're writing it and thinking it out loud and all that isn't very... I don't think it's a common skill. It's not something that, we do day to day normally. I suppose if you're pair programming, maybe that's something you might do. But in general, it's not something I did anyway for a long time. But when I started streaming, at first I struggled with sort of talking while streaming, but eventually I got used to it. And what I wanted to say about that is it turns out that it's extremely useful for... It's extremely useful for interviews. So if you go interview at different companies, part of the interview process is they want to see you solve a problem, and especially they want to see you talk about how you're going to go about solving it and all that. And when I interviewed at Google, I found that all this practice I had of streaming really paid off. I was, I just basically spoke the whole time. They knew exactly what I was thinking. And, I think that went a long way. So it's kind of a incidental thing that turned out to work out for me. Not natural at all. My wife would lock you. Yeah. Sometimes I do like speak out loud to myself when I'm working. I have my headphones on and I don't even realize it, and my wife does give me funny looks. Okay, so just to show you what we're talking about here, so let's say we get into the debugger here. And why am I on return? Well, that's interesting. Supposed to stop at main normally, but here I am stopping at this line. Oh wait, I think I didn't save. I didn't build. Yeah, that's why. It's stopping at main before I added those lines. So that's actually interesting. So something I might want to do is, when you debug code, is figure out if the code you're looking at is stale or not. So that would be an interesting challenge. I'd have to maybe look at timestamps. I could at least do that. I could look at the timestamp of the RST versus the CPP file. Just make sure that it's newer. I think that would at least help there. It won't guarantee anything, but it will at least guarantee that if you change your CPP file and haven't built, then it's newer than the RST file, and that's probably no good. Looks like my Docker is not running right now. Let me see if I can get that running. I know there was an update for Docker Desktop, so that's probably why. Oh yeah, there we go. It's starting right now. You can't see it because it's on my other screen here, but I'm just watching the task icon saying that Docker Desktop is starting. Bama says, you see if people are looking at the stream. What about days you have no people? How do you feel then? Actually, I don't really have a lot of people that watch my stream. And it doesn't really matter because I just talk anyway. I know that there are a lot of people who watch, not a lot, but some number of people who watch my stream when it's on YouTube, like they watch the VOD. And so, you know, for them, I talk, right? It is a bit funny to be speaking in the void. There are some streams where I think like nearly no one came on or spoke. But, you know, for YouTube. Okay, looks like Docker is running, so I should be able to build now. There we go. And hit F5. So actually, you know what? Before I forget, let me write down that to do because it's a good one. So I'll say validate source file is, or validate source file staleness, or check source file staleness. Hey Hinokuru. Hey, mainly a web developer. Should I consider myself Of course you can consider yourself a programmer. And you don't have to ask me. I mean, if you're doesn't matter what kind of dev you're doing, right? As long as you're writing code, you're solving problems, you know? I don't know. For me, that's programming. Check source file staleness, and I'll just say here, check timestamp, or compare timestamps of CPP or source file versus RST file. Yeah, I'll have to think about that too, because the RST will be referencing multiple files, not just one. So I guess I'll have to check all the source files that are referenced. Of source files versus RST file. And warn user about staleness. I guess there's a huge gap between you and me anyway. I'm a newbie in C and Rust. Hey man, we all start somewhere. You know, we all start somewhere. I started in, I mean, it depends what you consider starting. Like I guess if you know, I guess I could say I started, there are many starts, right? Like I didn't consider it before, but when I was in grade school, I did some logo writer, you know, like writing code to move the turtle with the drawing of lines and stuff. So some people consider that the first programming experience. So that could be. I also did some basic in high school, but even I never really considered that programming. I didn't even know it was called programming. I just thought of it as making, you know, text adventures. But I would say my real programming started in Pascal, the Pascal programming language. I started with that, and then about a year later, I switched to C, learned C, and then C++, started making games. So, you know, we all start somewhere, and just stick to it. Bama, oh, I did that too. Thompson MO5. Not sure what Thompson MO5 is, but for me it was Logo Writer, it was called, and it was on like IBM, you know, the first IBM clones there, those XT machines. Oh, I see. Okay. It's like a Z. No, for me it was an IBM. The one with the clacky keyboards and the... I'm younger than you. That's possible. I'm 40. So for me, it would have been like an 86 or something, or 88. Hinokuru, how to be persistent though? When I come from job, I'm so exhausted. I don't want to keep coding. Being working in this year for 3 years only. So I'll tell you what, a lot of people say that, right? Like there's a lot of discussions about it on Reddit about like working on personal projects on your own time and whether that makes sense and all that. Drink coffee. So my thought is this. So first of all, a lot of people ask me that question, like how can you keep coding at home after you spent a day doing it? For me, these projects that I do at home, like this emulator, it's a very different thing than what I do at work. I love what I do at work. I've always enjoyed it. I worked in video games for 15 years, and now I'm at Google and doing some really cool stuff. And I love it, but it is a job, and I don't get to do exactly what I want at the job. Plus, there's deadlines, right? And it can be pretty stressful and exhausting. I don't, you know, and I think the key is that it's not what I want to do all the time, and it's not on my own schedule. For me, personal projects like this project here, Vectrexy, I've been working on this for a very long time. It's been a few years now, right? I could work on this for another few years. Like there's nobody asking me to be done. There's no one telling me what to do. It's my own thing, you know. I work on it as long as there's something fun and interesting for me to do. And if there isn't, then I won't work on it, you know? So it's very different. When I come home and I'm like, you know, oh, I'm going to work on my emulator tonight, I get excited thinking about the cool stuff I'm going to try to get working. You know, like this whole debugger thing, it's really fun. It's really interesting. If it wasn't, I'd do something else. And I think that's what makes it very different for me. So, but don't get me wrong. There are nights where I just don't feel like it and I need to disconnect. So, you know, it'll happen too with my stream. I'll cancel streams here and there just to take a break. All right, so another question. How do I learn right coding if in my junior shit job we don't even use automated testing? Well, no, don't worry about being quiet. You can talk as much as you like. You know, this is I very happy to talk. So, okay. To answer your question, I'm just wondering why it says offline here on my stream. Weird. Anyway, yeah, so how do you get better at programming if your job doesn't make it better? I mean, I suppose I would say there are many answers to that. One is don't wait for your job to make it better for you. You know, try to take control of your own destiny. And if you want to get better, you know, buy some books, do what you're doing here, and you know, watch people. You know, find a personal project that interests you, and work on it. You'd be surprised how quickly you can get into something if it's something you're really interested in. You know, if you're saying that they're not doing testing at work, maybe try to bring in testing. Maybe be the leader that brings in the better practices. And if that doesn't work, maybe change jobs if that's within the realm of possibility. Try to find a job where you can grow. I've definitely said this before. I often recommend to people, I urge people not to stay in a job for too long. You know, especially if you feel yourself stagnating. It really does happen. Like you'll be working in a job, and at first it's really cool and interesting and you have a lot to learn, but eventually that curve, will start to plateau. You'll reach this apex where you're like, after that, either you pretty much stay the same or you even start to drop in terms of your knowledge and all that, just because there's not much left for you to do, and changing jobs, changing environment, maybe not changing jobs, but maybe changing group, changing project, something like that. All of those things put you in an uncomfortable environment, and that's typically where you learn the most, so I think those are some tips I guess I'd give, but if you're serious about getting better, you got to drive your own destiny. Don't wait for the job to do it for you. No one's gonna do it for you. You know what I mean? You got to do it yourself. That's good. It's good to hear. Yeah, Bama's right. Your boss does have their own agenda for sure. A job's a job, right? Like, no matter how great the company is, at the end of the day, they have their own interests and you're being paid to do something for them. Hopefully your interests align with what you have to do and that'll be great. But, overall, it's still a job. And paying the bills is important. I'd say especially now where people are losing their jobs. And so maybe not the time to change jobs just yet, but when things calm down. But like I said, in the meantime, there was a book that I read. I wish I could remember the name. But anyways, I can't remember now. But it was a book about being happy at work. And one of the things that it talked about was that a lot of times people are unhappy at work. And the first thing they think is, I'll quit this job and I'll find something else, But typically the best thing, or at least the first strategy you should do is, before you say, I hate this job, I'll leave it, is okay, I hate this job. How can I make this job better for myself, right? Sometimes it's about, like I said, changing teams, or sometimes it's about, talking to your boss and saying, hey, I'd really like to do this other thing. I'm not super happy with what we're doing here, or I think we should work on increasing the quality of our code. I think we should write tests. I'd like to be the one who introduces unit testing into our department. So you can try to make your job better. So hopefully that gives you a couple of pointers, I'm not sure what the Who Moved My Cheese is. Is that a book? An amazing way to deal with change in your... This is not the book I was talking about, but anyway, there's probably many books like that, right? Hey, what's up, Moosey boy? My 2 cents, don't test. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have no tests, so there you go, right? I'm all about risk, apparently, and fun. All right, so let's see if I can get into this here. Okay, so what I wanted to do was step into here. So normally if I hit F5, I should stop on line 38, right? And it works, right? Now let's say I start again. And we go in here. Now instead of hitting F5, I'm gonna shift F11. I'm gonna step out. Now step out, normally when you have a breakpoint, on its way out, it should stop at a breakpoint that it hits. So it normally should stop at 38. In my case, it won't, and that's what I need to fix. So let's say I step out, and you see I stepped out without hitting this breakpoint. So that's not, the way debuggers are. They typically work. So I'm going to make it work that way. The thing about that is I'm probably going to have to do that in like multiple cases. well, I guess I'm gonna have to do it in step over or out and in finish step out. And there's definitely some overlap between these two states. So most likely what I'll do is I'll refactor the overlap later on into some common functions I can use or something like that. But I'm not gonna do that now because that would be trying to refactor a bit too early. I prefer to get things working, then commit that and then look at it and then clean it all up after that. Oh, so it's 3 a.m. for you? Well, thanks for hanging out, Crew. Like I said, you can always watch my my streams later on. So it's 3 a.m. for you as well, Moosey boy? Yeah, no, for sure watching the YouTube videos after the fact is not as fun, but for me this is the time I can stream. Your English is great, man. I don't know what you're complaining about. It's all good to me. Oh wow, 2 Spaniards. That's cool. Okay, so let me think here. So what I want to do is, if we hit a regular breakpoint, so let's see here, should break into debugger, paused. So here we have cases where we break there, and I suppose I can also check here. So if we're doing this, otherwise if we're stepping over, soon as we've changed source location and are back on the original, we break. And then I suppose here I can say else. If I should say else here. Yeah, so Spain is pretty bad, right? How are you holding up, Moosey boy? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by looking for it. Yeah, same for me. We're fortunate enough, I'm fortunate enough that I can work from home and, but yeah, getting sick of being home for sure. It's not easy, but it's certainly a lot worse for some people who are sick or losing loved ones. We're definitely not out of the woods yet. Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it right here. We're going to execute instruction, immediately check for breakpoint, and if we hit one, we just return. And I have this stupid thing about being paused. And I have a plan for this actually, but I'm going to do it here. So this to-do, find a better way, I do have a plan for this, and I will address it in my refactor. So now this gets me to do this properly here. I'm very close to just putting this into the do execute instruction, but we'll see. And then similarly, over here, in the finish step out, and I guess in all these cases, I want to go to the paused state. Whoops. Step into doesn't really require that, I suppose, although, maybe it does. Though technically, I can't really set a breakpoint on a source location that doesn't exist. So I think we'd be okay. So basically for step in, we keep going until we hit a valid source location. So if there is a breakpoint there, we would stop anyway because, yeah, because you can only set breakpoints on valid source locations. So let's see. I think this gets us what we need. Let me make sure this is not running. Let's build this. Yeah, same here, Musipo. I mean, okay, so. No, you're saying total lockdown. We are not yet in total lockdown here in Canada, but we're getting there. But I've pretty much been locked down for about 4 weeks. Though I guess total lockdown. Does that mean you can't even go to the grocery store? Is that what that means? Like you can't go anywhere? So for us, most things are closed, but we can go to grocery stores. They're heavily controlled. You can only be one person from your family. Right now, we have to wear masks, and you got to get into lines with distances. You got to wash your hands before you go in. There's all these processes in place. Restaurants are like you can't eat at restaurants anymore, but certain restaurants are allowed to do takeout. That's our situation over here. Okay, so now if I step out here, I hit this breakpoint. That's perfect. So that's what we expect. And then I step out again and we're here. Similarly, here if I recurse, I think this is the last one. So if I, oh, not yet. Okay, there we go. So this is the last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, because I'm looking for -1 here. You can't even go for a short walk. Okay. So Jono, you're saying it's similar, for you it's similar to what I described here in Canada, for you guys in Australia. Yeah, so us, we can take walks, people do, just got to keep our distance again. I think the rule right now is you can't be a kilometer, more than a kilometer away from your home without a good reason. Something like that. So you can get stopped and you'll have to have a good reason for being more than a kilometer away from home. So if I shift F11 here, see, that's a bit weird. I would have thought I'd stop on, oh no, it's because I've already passed that. It's not weird at all. Right, okay, let's try that again. You're allowed to exercise, yeah, same here. So shift F11 brings us there, brings us there, brings us there. Actually, so I'm trying to step out. That's behaving a bit strangely, I have to say. Not sure what it's supposed to do. I guess because on its way to exiting, it's hitting a breakpoint. Yeah. Right. So I'm not stepping, yeah, actually that makes perfect sense. I'm not able to step out of the recurse because the step out gets interrupted by the breakpoint. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of thing I don't really think about when I'm debugging, because first of all, I don't debug recursive functions that often, and secondly, when I do, and if I hit Shift F11 and hit a breakpoint, I usually just disable the breakpoint and go. So absolutely, Moosey boy. It is crazy. But you know, it's interesting when you start looking at history and you read about, like the different flus, the different, was it the Spanish flu actually in around like during World War I? I think that's the one, right? The Spanish flu that that killed a ton of people. And yeah, like I heard that it was a huge pandemic, killed millions, but like the reason why it wasn't talked about as much was because it was during World War I, and so most of the news was about the war. Also, I think they were trying to keep that kind of news low, like their hush, so that people would not lose hope for the war because so many soldiers were gone. So it's kind of crazy, but when you actually look at the facts, it's quite scary. Yeah, Bama. Absolutely. Yes, different circumstances. At least we have the internet. That's one crazy thing. Like, I can't see my family, but at least I can talk to them and see them on, online, which is amazing. It definitely could be a lot worse, right? Yeah, I know, USA is scary. New York is scary. The numbers are pretty nuts there. So step over. So let's say I want to step over. So that was the other thing I wanted to try, was stepping over a function that has a breakpoint. So let's do this. So foo has a breakpoint in it. I'm going to hit F. Oh, thanks, Neox Quick, for the follow. Appreciate it. So here I am about to step over foo. So I'll just show you here. So this is the step over. Now I expect it to break now on line 38 because there's a breakpoint inside foo, right? So we'll step over, and there we go. So now we are there. Yeah. Same thing for recurse. All right, so this looks like it's all working as expected. Hey, thanks, Moosey Boy. So you've been watching the VODs? I appreciate that. So the 50% that's over your head, is it just like, is it because I'm not explaining it well enough, or is it, I'm just curious, you know? Is it just because you haven't dealt with this kind of thing before? Because a lot of this is new for me as well. Maybe I'm not doing a super good job of explaining it, but because I'm learning it as I go. Oh, okay, you're not a C++ programmer. So how do you find it, seeing C++ code coming from more of a web angle? Like what do you program in generally if you're a web developer? Are you like doing JavaScript? Are you doing or are you like more like a Microsoft stack web developer doing like C# with .NET Core or something? I'm certainly not a web developer myself, so I don't know much about that stuff. Wow, so you see, you just listed 3 things that I barely know anything. I don't know Vue or Laravel. And Postgres I've heard about, but I think Postgres is like some kind of database thing. But I'm glad you like it. It's good that you're doing what you like. Okay, MySQL, okay. So I think we can call this feature done, the feature of step over and step out. I mean, unless I, you know, find a bug, but right now it looks like it's working. Technically what I should do is write unit tests for all this stuff, but I am not going to do that. I will move this, or at least I'll just mark this done here for now. Now, before I start on the next thing, I think I'm going to commit this and do some cleanup, which is maybe not as interesting, but definitely something I have to do. Yeah, that's one thing about web dev. I may not be a web developer, but I certainly know that there's a lot of technology changes in that field. Lots of frameworks. Oh yeah, something also that I wanted to do, rename to caller address. So one thing I think is I don't actually need these conditional breakpoints. So I'm wondering if I should just remove it. Maybe I should keep it in case I use it later on. Because all this code came in with this commit, so I'm not sure if I want to keep it. originally I added this conditional breakpoint stuff because that's how I was going to do the step out, step over stuff like I had done in my other debugger. But it turns out I was able to do it by just using my state machine and looking at call stacks, call stack depth. So, on the fence about that one. It's not like it's a lot of code to keep around, and most of the time it's going to do nothing because this for loop will end right away because I won't have any. So I thought going to Google, I'd have to like become more web developer-y, you know. Definitely they have a lot of web devs there, but it turns out that I'm on the Chrome GPU team, and I continue to pretty much work in C++ and do like drivers and systemsy level stuff. So I haven't had to do much in the realm of web dev just yet. What's my biggest con? Honestly, I have no complaints. I've actually been there about a year now. Yeah, I think it's a year tomorrow. I believe I started on the 8th of April last year. And honestly, it's been great. They've been great. People at my office are super nice. My team is really nice. Hey, thanks, man. I don't have anything bad to say. Although if I did have anything bad to say, I'm not sure I'd say it on stream. But I truthfully don't have anything bad to say. Yeah. Should I be bashing my employer? Yeah, so variant, I think I don't need that here because I would have moved it into the header file. Oh, interesting. I guess I have variants somewhere in one of these headers. Usually when people work at the big companies, they very often mention the corporate atmosphere. So yeah, I get that. Perhaps it's because I work at one of the satellite offices where it's not big yet, I suppose, you know. And at least the way things are sliced up right now, everybody is in, like we have these offices that have about 10 people in them max. So, you know, I'm sitting with my team. We're a pretty small team. Like my immediate team on the product I work on we're like 4 or 5. So I don't get that feeling of, you know, big corporate company. But for sure I get it sometimes. Like there's a lot of emails that come in, you know, from the top with lots of information. So I guess stuff like that, you know. But it's not that bad. I guess I have a lot of filters in my Gmail, so I don't, you know, don't feel it as much. I could say though, when I started at Google, the first few weeks, it was crazy. The amount of email that would come in before I had all my filters in place. It was just like a funnel. but yeah, once you got that, once you get the hang of it and start filtering all that stuff out into bins that you pretty much ignore, and you look at the stuff that matters. Right. Exactly. I will say though that Google has been particularly great with regards to to this COVID-19 situation. They very quickly told us to like work from home, and they've been great about allowing us to bring home equipment or get equipment that we need, anything to keep us safe. I have to say, they've been amazing about that, and they take it really seriously, making sure that all the products that Google makes are available for people. Like right now, obviously Google Search, but like Hangouts, which is extremely useful to a lot of people right now that are trying to communicate, and making sure that everything stays up. You can imagine that the load on a lot of the software has gone up, right? People who are not video conferencing as much on Google Hangouts as they are now, so they're making sure that works out. And yeah, I don't know. I think, anyways, that's my take. Obviously, it's a huge company, and I don't know everything, but from my perspective, I think they're doing great. Yeah, exactly. Not a Pentium 4. A TPU? What's a TPU? A tensor processing unit? Is that what you meant? I have to say, we have pretty good machines though. Can't complain. They definitely give us powerful machines. So for those of us who work on Chrome anyway, actually the majority of people don't need really powerful machines at Google because everything's on the web, right? So, but when you're working on Chrome and you have to compile it for all the different targets, and it's all in C++ and it takes forever to build unless you have good machines, yeah. So pretty happy about that. You're into FPGAs and AI chips? Yeah, I hear ya. Okay, this looks good. All right. So implement step over and step out. Wondering why I'm using Beyond Compare and not VS's internal Git tools. Yeah, habit mainly. It's true that the Git tools are pretty good in here, can't complain too much about them. It's true. It's mostly habit. I like Git extensions a lot. I like this graph view. I know the one in Visual Studio doesn't give exactly the same thing. I know it's always getting better though, so that's great. But you know, it's what I know. I actually developed on Git extensions for a while. I added this feature here, the submodules feature, among other things. So yeah, I'm sort of partial to this tool. And as part of that, opening diffs and stuff, you know, you can set up your own external diff tool. And so I have a license for Beyond Compare, so I use that. Yeah, Beyond Compare is great. I've been using it for a really long time. I think I bought my license. Well, I had a license for Beyond Compare 3, I think, and then 4. I bought one for 4 when it came out. I like to support those that team. It's a small company, but they do good work. You know, Beyond Compare has a lot of great features that a lot of diffing tools don't have. One feature I like about Beyond Compare that I haven't seen in a lot of diff tools is that you can do this thing. I won't have a way to show you like a good example of it, but like, let's say you have a diff. Sometimes you have like, you know, your diffing files and there's like, there's a lot of noise in there because say you have timestamps in these 2 logs and all the timestamps are different, of course. So they show up as diffs. In those cases, you can actually go into rules and you can actually like add regular expressions here to mark a search as in your text there as unimportant. You know, so you can come here and you can say like regular expression, and then, you know, maybe you'll say like, I don't know, at the beginning of the line, all the way up until, I don't know, there's a colon or something like that. This is unimportant, right? You do this, and then I don't have any here, but I suppose I could put something like, I don't know, let's say that the timestamp was a bunch of numbers followed by a colon. You see like now how it turned blue, right? So let's say on the same line I had, you know, another set of numbers. So these two are not the same, and this would show up as a diff as it does here. But then you can say ignore unimportant differences, right? And that basically now it gives it a different color, but it doesn't show up as a diff anymore. And so let's say there's like, you know, the same text on the line. These 2 lines are not considered different because this part is unimportant, you know? However, if they were different, you know, like this, now it shows up as a diff because despite the unimportant text, there is a difference in the part that is important. So this, to me, is a feature that I have used so many times when diffing, you know, logs or anything where most of it is similar and there's parts of it that I don't care about that I want to filter out. So maybe there are some other diff tools that do this, but this is definitely a selling feature for me. It's definitely worth the 60 or so bucks that that this tool costs, which is basically a perpetual license that you can use on any machine as long as it's you for the version, right? So this is my license for version 4, which has been out for a few years. All updates for 4 are part of that. And like I said, I can bring this to work. I can install it on my work machine. That's fine. As long as I'm the one using it, I can put it as many places as I like. So, you know, totally support this this company. Yeah, so Jono, you use Beyond Compare as well? Yeah, I know a lot of people like WinMerge. I gave it a shot, but it doesn't have the feature set, you know. Man, I'm tired tonight. I don't know how much further I'm gonna go, to be honest. Feeling pretty tired. Didn't get much done, but you know. Let's see. So one thing I did want to do is I wanted to get rid of this mess, and I was thinking about that. So you use WinMerge? WinMerge is fine, man. Let's not bash the other compare tools, you know, it's whatever works for you. Like I said, for me, it was just finding there was a lot of situations where Beyond Compare did a better job for me, you know. Another feature I love about Beyond Compare, and it's not something I've seen in a few other merge tools. I don't think WinMerge has this, but you know when you do a like when you need to do a merge, actually. Yeah. So you know when you need to do like a merge, you know, you have like a conflict and you want to bring up your merge tool. So Beyond Compare is a really great merge tool because what I've seen before is a lot of merge tools will show you 3 panes. You'll have the like, you know, your changes, their changes, and then the bottom will be like the merged changes where you know, decide which part you want, or you can like go and modify it to make it the merge that you wish for. But Beyond Compare will have 4 panes. The top middle is the base file. And then on the left, you'll have, let's say, the diffs for your changes versus the base. And on the right, their changes versus the base. And then on the bottom, the merged. Having that base view there, I haven't seen that in a lot of merge tools. I don't know if WinMerge does it. I think P4 Merge doesn't do it. But anyway, that's another feature I really like about Beyond Compare. You guys are gonna think that I I promote their product or something. They're paying me to promote their product. Okay, so what is it again I want to do here? Yeah, rigged, exactly. I got a nice cut. If you guys go sign up now, and if you call within the next 10 minutes, you can give your second license to your friend for half the price. I agree. It is a good deal. All right, so what I wanted to do is I don't want to do this target state thing the way I'm doing. I was thinking of instead making like a queue and basically making like a thread safe queue that we pop off requests from. Kudos if you have a referral code in the Twitch description for next stream. I should do that, right? I should totally find out if I can get some referral bonuses or whatever. All right, so yeah. So something like along the lines of, and now you're going to see how I'm not super good at multi-threaded, but anyway. Four o'clock. Hey man, well thanks for hanging out, Moosey boy. Yeah, and stay safe. Like I'm thinking something along the lines of creating some kind of thread safe queue like this. And the idea there is that you'd be able to, I guess, what is the interface for Q actually? Push front, pop front, I don't know. Push back and pop front, is that what we usually do with the Q? Right, it's a container adapter that gives the programmer function of a queue. First in, first out. Inserts element at the end, removes the first element. Okay, so it's push and pop. Fair enough. So we'll use perfect forwarding for this. Now the thing is, to do this, we're going to have to lock our mutex. So that's the whole point here. So I guess it's going to be a lock guard of this mutex. Sorry, lock guard first did mutex. And then we'll have a pop. Now the pop, what should I do for the pop? Maybe I could do it as an optional. Right, this calls pop front. So pop actually removes. What we want is, I see. So normally you would call front. Yeah, I don't really like that. So we'll do that. So we'll do another lock. Actually check if there's something in there. So if is there empty? Yes. So if it's empty, return like that. Otherwise, we will grab the value here. We will pop and return V. Okay, so this would be, I think, the simplest possible queue that isn't the most optimal. Now, I was thinking about maybe trying to make this slightly faster with this kind of atomic bool where we check, because we have like this kind of consumer producer thing, I would like to have like a quick check before I even bother popping out elements. I don't know if that's worth doing. Maybe I'll start off like this, and we'll see how it performs. You know, keep it simple, just to start. I'm gonna throw it up here and then move it to, you know, to a good place. So this is what I was thinking. is we would have a queue, and instead of like target state, we would call these requests. It's like a request queue, and now of course I need requests. So I will use an enum class here. And the idea is these are requests for coming from the debugger, right? The debugger is making a request, and we would like to service those requests in our state machine. So rather than say it's a target state, so the kind of requests that we want to make are the ones that we'll see setting target state to. So let's see here. So this is like, we'd like to pause. In fact, you see it's going to go with these requests here, right? So I'm just going to put this over there. So we're requesting a pause, we're requesting a continue. So next I'm going to call it step over, just like I did here. And we're requesting a step into, step out. I think that's it. I might need to do something here for breakpoints. Yeah, I might have to do something here as well, but we'll see. For now, I think this is good because that's actually what I'm handling in my current state machine. And eventually we'll have things like disconnect and all that, but this is what I need right now. Let's see. Yeah, interesting. If I remove that comma, it makes a whole mess out of it. Maybe I'll call this debugger request. Okay. And now we go in here. So what's good about this is that, you know, this is what I was talking about last time, is that if, I don't know, I do a bunch of actions in sequence and I haven't handled them all in Vectrexy in time, at least I can service these requests in order. I think that would make a lot more sense than what I was doing here, which is just slamming the state to something else, which is probably bad. Okay, so we push that. So I will be removing target state after, but I'll just leave it here for now. I'll continue. Step over here, step into here, step out. I think that's it, yeah. Okay, and then in here, when I do check for transition, this is where we're going to change this up a bit. So what we want to do is, yeah, I suppose this is going to be a bit more complicated because I want to get rid of target state here. I guess not, it's not a big deal. So what we'll do is we'll say if request equals to request queue pop. So I have a request, right? So if I have a request, then we'll switch on the request. So So actually, I'm going to put the type here, just so that we get some help from our debugger here. Does this not return a std optional? It does. Oh yeah, sorry, it's an optional of debugger request. Okay, I'll go back to this. So I have one case debugger request. Let's put all of these in here. So we want okay. So I've got those in there. So now if we've requested a pause, I'm just, right now I am going to slam my states, but at least yeah, was it pausing here? Yeah. So we'll go to pausing. Continue means what we want to go to running. So we are still slamming states, but we don't have this like kind of duplication of target state and the other states. And eventually I can do things differently if I want to. We want to go a step over here. Oh, and one thing I need to check is, am I already in that state? Because if I am, I suppose we don't want to re-go into there, right? We want to finish what we're doing, I suppose. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's something to think about. Because right now I was saying if the target state is equal to that or that, return false. So if we are already... Oh, but now here we're checking request queue. That's it. So we won't have a request. That's what's good about this. I won't need to pass in the current state. No, this should be fine. So if I have a request, then we change state, we return true, otherwise we return false, like this. Okay, let me remove this code here. All right, let's see if this builds. Okay, not quite. Right. So for this, I need mutex. I'm going to need q, I guess. And anything else? I think that's it. so that builds. Let's see if it actually works. It's not quite working. Let me see here. Yeah, my step into is not doing the right thing. So let me see what's going on here. Oh. Yeah, I should more carefully look at what I'm doing here. So step into is step into. Over, into, out. That looks good. Okay, let's try it again. Stop here. Okay, let's see here. That looks good. Perfect. Okay, that looks like it's working. So now we should be able to remove that target state thing. Because we're not using it anymore. Yeah. So all these to-dos are gonna basically disappear now. Yeah, I definitely like this a lot better. So now we don't have this kind of duplication that I had before. We had this enum that listed the states. We had actual states. That was basically the wrong abstraction here. Now instead we have requests. It's still an enum, but it's different because we have these requests and we have a queue, and we make state transitions by looking at those requests. And that makes a lot more sense. Did that build? I think it did. Yeah. Now, the next thing I wanted to do was, where was it? Oh yeah, I wanted to get rid, I think I could get rid of this now. Yeah, this whole notion of being paused, don't think I need it because I have a state that says I'm paused, right? So like if I request a pause and I'm not, and I, you know, right now I'm asserting that I'm not paused, but it's okay if I got a request. If I am paused, I'll just remain in paused. That's fine. So I think I can get rid of that. So all of this stuff with this atomic pause, I want to get rid of it. The only thing that bothers me is, where is it? Yeah, I right now, this code here for setting breakpoints, if you set a breakpoint while the thing is running, it's not thread safe. So I do need to do something about that, because right now I am accessing like, you know, user breakpoints here. I'm calling remove all. I'm modifying something on one thread, which could be, you know, being read on another thread, right? Like in check user breakpoints, sorry, in check here, check for breakpoints, I'm actually looking at the values in there. So that's completely not thread safe. Now it sort of works because typically we're setting breakpoints while we're not running, but it is easy to just set breakpoints while we're running. And in fact, yeah, exactly. It's easy to break this. So I do need to make this thread safe. I'm not even looking at pause though here, so not quite sure what I'm going to do here. Probably what I'm going to do is put some kind of, what could I do? Maybe what I'll do is I'll add a request and then wait on a condition variable. Like I'll have this kind of thing where it'll be like, we made a request to set a breakpoint, or maybe something more generic than that. Like I'm waiting for, like I'm going to make a request to pause the debugger and then wait here for the pause to occur. And then maybe I could, you know, use a condition variable to trigger an event that says, okay, we're paused now, and I'll be waiting in this thread for that pause. So it doesn't mean that this thread will block until that happens in the main thread, but I think that should be okay. But I'll do that afterwards. So I'll say to do request a pause, then wait for it on a condition variable, or maybe like an event. Yeah. And the thing is, another option would have been to like do the breakpoint handling in the state machine. I suppose that would be a possibility, except that we need to respond here. And that's the thing. We do need to send a response back in this handler. So I do need to actually populate response in this code here. See, like add verified breakpoint, we have to add stuff to the response. So I can't like handle it somewhere else. That's what this means. Okay, so I think we have a plan there. So I think I can get rid of this paused guy here. Yeah, let's do that. So here I'm saying if not pause, we'll always execute the frame. So this paused atomic variable comes from before I had a state machine, where I actually had a state that reflects that we're paused. So that's why this was necessary before. Should not be necessary anymore, unless it's something I'm missing. Yeah, because see, everywhere I'm doing break into debugger, and now I'm actually setting the state to paused, which is probably something I should do in break into debugger, since I'm always doing that. So that's pausing and paused, and we just check for transitions. Nothing else to do in there. Perfect. So I think that's all we need. You can just go through it again. So now we'll always call this, but in fact, this might be a bit of a misnomer. I'm calling it execute frame instructions. That's not a good name for this function, because we won't necessarily execute frame instructions here. What we will do, well, yeah, it's a bit of a misnomer. I'm not sure if I should rename it to like update or something like that. But ultimately it's trying to execute a frame's worth of instructions, because we get a frame time, and the idea is to execute that many instructions for that frame. And then for each instruction, I'm doing this kind of state machine stuff. So maybe I'll leave it alone. Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's the other thing too, is I do wonder if I should be waiting in all of these requests, because yeah, I return a response, but this response is actually telling the debugger, okay, we are paused. I actually think this idea of adding a request and then waiting for it to be, this request to be serviced by the main thread, is something I probably should be doing in all of these cases. You know? Okay, well actually, before I start deleting code, let me just make sure this works. Got to make these refactoring changes bit by bit. And since I have no tests, I gotta be the unit tester myself here. My own QA. Good. Just to show you. See, if I hit F5, we're in the main loop here. You see, like, hit F5, and you can see that frame by frame, this thing is moving. I'm actually wondering what's happening there when I hold F5. I think what's happening is I have breakpoints in the BIOS here that end up getting tripped somehow. Huh. No, it's really interesting. It is weird doing some stuff where it's stopping in weird places. Huh. I think I know what's going on here. This might be related exactly to what I was saying about not waiting for the response at the and saying that we're done. The debugger requests when it pauses, it runs and then pauses, runs and pauses. When it pauses, it says, hey, can I get the call stack for where we're at? And that request, because I'm not waiting, correctly, it'll return wherever it happens to be at that moment. So that's very interesting. Yeah. But anyway, looks like my changes to remove that pause thing is working fine. So let's clean that all up now. I also noticed that I typically give my local functions capital letters like this. This guy should really be on the inside. Or maybe this guy should be on the outside. Okay, and I will do the thing of break into debugger, setting this. I'm also wondering if I should just do the on event as well in there. Because every time we break, we have a reason for breaking that we should probably send. And I think this, I have to rename it as well. On event should probably be called send event or send DAP event, because that's basically what we're doing here. Or, let me think here. Stepped. Oh yeah, okay. We go to paused and then we say why we paused. Okay, so let's do that. Or I'll just say event here. Like that. So now break into debugger will basically look like this. Oh, yeah, this is that thing about, yeah, whatever. Okay. So it's starting to look a bit cleaner. Okay, I'll worry about that later. So it's looking good. Let's do another little test. So we could put like a conditional breakpoint on, let's say, when we collide with the paddle here, just to show you that if we make it collide with the paddle, we should hit that breakpoint. Boom, right there. And see, we're about to play a sound. And while, this is kind of interesting, while the ball collides, we want it to keep moving. We won't actually see it because we don't render. And that's another thing I have to fix, is that while we're paused this way, or in the debugger, we should not we should pause the rendering. Oh, so that's interesting too. You can see the draw here, drawing each object and then drawing the score. That's kind of neat. I didn't even realize it did that. Let's do that again. So that's one paddle, another paddle, the ball, the arena, or whatever you want to call it, and then the text here for first score and the text for the second score. Okay, so it looks like it's working. So let's put that thread safe queue somewhere. I'm thinking of maybe just calling it like a TS queue or something. So I might wrap other containers. And for this, we're gonna put it in where is it? Core. Core is as good a place as any. So we'll make a file here. TSQ. Excuse me. Thank you. So I should have in here, if I go to my targets view, core include TSQ there. So this will take a bit more time to build since I touched a core header, it looks like. Bit surprised. I added a header file and included it here. Didn't expect it to build the world. Oh, right. Also needs optional. Okay, so let's get this in there. So there's my new thread safe queue. Changes to the DAP debugger with the request queue. Okay, so I guess I'll say use a thread safe queue to handle debugger requests. Also includes some miscellaneous cleanup. And the target state. Well, I guess that kind of goes with it. Whatever. Okay. So what's next? So I was thinking about that event thing. There's actually this event class that I nabbed from the CPP DAP example. Am I actually using this thing? I am. Yeah, so this is actually pretty cool. This event class is basically this wraps a condition variable. It has a mutex and the concept of fired. Now this one here waits, blocks until the event is fired, and then fire sets fire signals. And unblocks any calls to wait. Right. So I think I could use this for what I was talking about before. It's exactly what we're using when we're waiting for the configuration done request to happen here. So when we make a request, I might have to add some kind of timeouts and stuff like that in there, but I think for now that's okay. I'm probably going to rename this. think. So did I call it again? Oh, requests queue, yeah. So for example, I ask for a pause here. I should call it more like event or request processed, something like that. The only thing with this is it does mean that if there are, I guess I won't really have multiple requests that are being processed in that case. I'll always only have one if I'm locking on an event here, if I'm blocking on an event. I guess another way to do this, no, there's not much I could do here. It's just the nature of the way this is programmed. There is a question of whether or not it matters to wait in these cases. Technically speaking, if I'm sending pause response, I think it means that we're paused. Let me go see what it says here. So this request suspends the debugger. The debugger adapter first sends the response. Okay, and then a stopped event with the reason pause after the thread has been paused successfully. Okay, so actually it is okay to respond without having paused yet. Right, response to the pause request. This is just an acknowledgement, so no body field is required. Okay, so I guess we don't need this. And probably the same thing for continue. Let's see. So continue does have something. Here it says the continue response has all threads continued bool. If true, the continue request has ignored the specified thread and continued all threads instead. If this attribute is missing, a value of true is assumed for backward compatibility. I mean, in our case, we don't have multiple threads, so it's totally fine to just send it this way. So nothing to wait for there. I think, right? Because unlike, so here pause, it says we tell it later on that we've paused, but continue, do we let it know that we've continued? I guess it doesn't matter. The debugger doesn't really care, does it? Maybe it does care. Okay, what about next? What about these guys? So the request starts the debuggy to run again for one step. The debug adapter first sends a response and then a stopped event. So that's just like before. This is just an acknowledgement. So again, we don't need to wait for that. That's probably true for all the steps. So yeah, I think none of these are going to be required. But definitely for set breakpoints, in order for this to be thread safe, we're going to have to do the request to pause and then wait. So maybe what we'll do is we'll say push a debugger request pause and then wait here for the paused event. Why doesn't it see this? The only problem with this is that we have other pause requests, and if I signal all the time, if I always fire, it will be in the fired state, right? So I need to do a reset when we wait here. Okay, we'll do it like that. So now we'll say paused event. I don't know why this guy is complaining. I think just the debugger, sorry, the IntelliSense debugger is not seeing it, maybe? Let me see here. No, it is actually complaining. What am I doing wrong? Paused event. Pause event is an event. Is it because I have, oh, because I have a DAP debugger event. Yeah. Let me call this something else. I'll call this a TS event, keeping with my thread safe, because it is thread safe actually, this event. We can call it across threads. So I'll do that. I don't like my shortcut key stopped working, but weird. Okay, so let's see here. So we wait for it here. What's that? Instant replay. So when we process pause, we do this. In fact, I wonder if instead of doing that, I should probably do it in the pausing state itself. In the pause state, I mean. The first time we enter it, perhaps. Okay, so when we first enter the pause, we fire the paused event. So now let's see if we don't deadlock. And already we're not up and running. I have a feeling I know what's going on here. Let me see here. Right. Problem is if we call wait after fire, we're gonna wait forever. That's the problem with resetting the fire here. Yeah, it's not working because of my because of this exact reason. Setting breakpoints. When we first start, we're setting breakpoints. So if we wait, we're not going to end up getting the fired event. So many red flags flaring in my head from these code snippets. And they shouldn't, because I don't know anything about multi-threading, laugh out loud. I just have a burnt-in intuition that shared pointers are as bad as global variables. Where do you see shared pointer? Oh, and hi, Gloomy Mist. I don't think we've chatted before, but I'm not sure I see shared pointers here. Oh, the DAP reader. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's nothing to worry about that. That's just oh no, don't worry about it. There's not that much shared pointer usage in my code, don't worry. And you're right to worry about, you know, overuse of shared pointer. But this is really just for handling, this is the way DAP works, or at least CPP DAP. So what is DAP? It's the debug adapter protocol. So it's this thing right here. It's a specification for a generic debug adapter, like a debugger, that Microsoft put together. And the whole goal of it, which is what this page is about, is to turn this into this. So the idea is before DAP, or at least still today, a lot of people write their own implementation of a debugger. And so, each editor will have its own C# debugger and Node.js debugger, or and then you'll have, let's say here, this IDE supports Python and has its own implementation of how to do Python debugging, and some other tool has a Python debugger, right? And the whole idea is to get to a point where all IDEs, editors, and tools can implement this one generic debugger that just debugs, and it speaks this debug adapter protocol. And then you can have these implementations of the adapter for each type of, let's say, language that can be debugged. So if you want, if you're writing your own editor and you would like to be able to debug Python, well, if there's a Python debug adapter that's been written for you, you can just talk DAP to that. And then you can also talk DAP to pretty much any other thing, that as long as there's a debug adapter for it. Now, in my case, I want to be able to debug C++ programs that are compiled using an old version of GCC that targets the old CPU for the Vectrex. There's no dwarf symbols, there's no ELF, there's none of that because it's an older toolchain and an older file format, so I have to do my own debug stuff for that. Exactly. And DAP is already supported by quite a lot of tools. I think they're listed here. Let's see. I mean, it's a specification. No, it is a specification. There exist implementations of these adapters, but it is actually a specification. So there are implementations here. So you can see these are debug adapters for a bunch of languages. You can see quite a few people have written stuff for this. So like if you're writing your own editor and you'd like to be able to debug all of these, you could just write a single piece of code that talks DAP and you would have effectively support for all of these. Yeah. Or more like there are adapters for, you're seeing it from the point of view of the debugger, but I see it more like talking to a debugger. You know what I mean? But it is multi-directional, so it's the same difference, I suppose. So these are debug. So these are the tools that currently implement DAP. So there's VS Code, which is what I'm using right now. Visual Studio, and obviously Visual Studio for Mac. There's Eclipse, Emacs, Thea, which I don't use. I don't know, Vim, and apparently something called Cloud Studio. So anyone who uses Vim and Emacs, there's a lot of people out there, they can use this. At some point, I intend to at least try Vim, see how it works, just to see. But yeah. Yeah, GDB is like the basic debugger that's existed for a long time. So the C++ debug adapter protocol here actually it talks to GDB. I think it maybe supports LLDB now, but mainly what it does is it speaks to GDB. And I think it also speaks to MSVC's debugger, like the Visual Studio debugger on Windows. Although I think that most people who work on Windows use Visual Studio proper to debug, but you can debug if you want, I think. But if you're working on Linux or Mac and you use VS Code and you install the C++ extension for debugging, it uses this adapter protocol to talk to GDB, and it does all the translation there. Right. So that's basically what I'm working on, and I'm using this library called CPP DAP, which is an implementation of DAP for C++ programmers. So basically it takes that whole protocol. It's not for a specific language, it's more for the protocol itself. It's a wrapper around the protocol. So CPP DAP for C++ debug adapter protocol. Just makes it easier to integrate into your C++ program, which is exactly what I wanted. All right, I think I'm gonna call it a night here. I will resume from this point in a couple nights from now. I need to think a little bit about what I want to do here. I don't want to get into like, deadlock situations where I'm waiting on an event that might never trip. So I need to think a little bit more about this, but I'm getting kind of tired. And I think we did some good work tonight. So yeah, it was nice talking to you too, Gloomy Mist. Thanks for chatting. So yeah, if you guys want to join in, it'll be in a couple nights on the 9th, normally on Thursdays at the same time, 9 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.